Are we always going to live in St. Louis? Are we going to live in the East? Are we going to live in the West?
Well, today we're going to make one of these. It's nothing complicated, simple little game, sort of based on that Twilight Zone episode called Nick of Time, where the couple go into a restaurant and start playing this little yes and no game and get addicted to it. Well, this is not as complicated, very easy to play. You ask it a question and it answers yes or no. For example, is it going to rain today? The answer is yes. Well, I thought it was going to be sunny. Well, maybe not. You can ask it other questions, of course, more serious if you like. For example, will my favorite team win the pennant this year? Yes. Very cooperative board so far. Well, let's get to work on this thing and see if we can put one together, including the little devil's head with a spring. All right, part of the game has as ornamentation this devil's head at the top. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this out of a piece of paduke, which is a red type of wood. And that would be very fitting, I think, for the devil's head. So let's tape this up with some painter's tape, and put down the pattern, and go over to the scroll saw and cut this little guy's head out. Alright, we're over at the scroll saw now. You got the pattern put down on this piece of paduke, and I use some masking tape, actually painter's tape, underneath, and then I use a glue stick to put the pattern down. And I, instead of cutting these out, save a little bit of work, I drilled 2 holes for the eyes. And I needed to drill here, and we have to cut out. One is for the mouth at the bottom, sort of a mouth, and then we have the actual top part of the skull to cut out, and then around the exterior of the entire skull. So there's only really 3 cuts here that have to be made. So I'll get to work on these. I'll try to keep my hand out of the way as best I can. It's a little difficult sometimes. I'm using a number 5 reverse tooth blade on this, and we'll take the speed a little bit slow. It doesn't have to be really fast. No great rush. This is paduke, however, so I'm going to be wearing a face mask. The smell from this wood is really bothersome and causes some irritation, so I always wear a mask when I cook this. So I won't be talking too much. Okay, finished cutting the devil's head out of this Paduc, and looks pretty good. Take a look at the back side of it, pretty much the same as the front. Now what we need to do is go around and smooth this out a little bit. And when I was cutting it, by the way, I noticed these things are really loosely floating in the air, so I cut them at the tops a little bit thicker on the sides here, a little thicker than they are on the actual pattern, so that they won't break off when we're doing a little bit of sanding. So you might want to keep that in mind as you do your cutting. Alright, so let's take this over to the sanding wheel and smooth it out a little bit. Sanding brush. Alright, I peeled the tape off of this guy, and now we'll give him a little smoothing out here. Alright, looks a lot better now. He's sort of rounded over on the edges and look as good as the devil's going to look, I guess. Alright, we now have our little devil head friend here in the vise, and I put a little tiny drill here. I think it's a 16th inch drill bit, and I want to put a little tiny hole right here for the spring attachment we're going to do. So let's see if we can do this without wrecking it. Oh, gotta tighten it up a little better probably. Send it up here. Drop it down somewhat. And we'll tighten it up. Pretty secure. There we go. Make sure that's on camera. Okay. We'll take our little drill bit, put it approximately on center, and very slowly put a hole there. Very good. Worked out pretty good, I think. Now what we're going to want to do is put our spring on that point, and that should fit pretty nicely in there, and it does. Okay. Okay, as part of the project, we're going to have a little spring attached to the devil's head, and that'll help it bob around, give a little animation to the project. We could buy a spring, but we can just as easily make one too. I have here some galvanized wire. This is 19 gauge wire. It's galvanized steel wire, they say. And I have a drill with a dowel put in the bit, and there's a little hole that I drilled in the dowel. And now all you have to do to make a spring, it's relatively easy, is to insert this wire into the hole and then very slowly let it wrap around the dowel as it's turning. Here we go. Okay, you can make this as long as you want. Just made a short one here for the time being. And take this out of the drill and remove the wire. What I'll do, actually, to make this easier, is just to actually cut the wire. Okay. And that allows this to just slide right off of the dowel. And now we take our spring and stretch it out a little bit. Okay, let me show you the spring that we made from that. So this is a small spring. What we'll do is we'll make a bigger one for the actual project. But it functions very nicely, goes in and out. And we're going to need it just so that the head of the devil attaches to it and lets it bob around every once in a while. The lighter the wire you use, the more bobbing effect you get. Okay, let's go and attach this to the devil's head. I took that spring that we made and bent the end of it, the tip of it, a little tiny bit so that it would fit that hole that we drilled in the bottom of the devil. And I'm going to put just a drop of super glue on there to make sure it holds it in place. We don't want it to come loose. And when the spring vibrates back and forth, the head will move, give it a little special effect. All right, the way the game works, of course, it's a yes and no type of game. And we're going to make this relatively easy. We create this wheel that has yeses and nos alternating around the circle. And we're going to put this down on a piece of wood and cut around it so that we have a little circular tray. And then we'll be able to spin it. And we're also going to have a pointer set up on the final table. And wherever this lands, that'll be the answer. So you're going to ask the devil the question, is it going to rain today? You spin it. If it lands on yes, well, there's your answer. If it lands on no, well, there's your answer again. But they must be the response yes or no. So we're going to take this now and attach it to a piece of wood and cut it out on the scroll saw. I think we're going to cut out the words also, make it a little bit more effective too. So let's go do that now. Alright, we've glued down the wheel on this little 1/4-inch piece of plywood, and we're going to use the scroll saw to cut out the words yes and no at various points on the wheel. So let's do that now. Okay, finished the circle and all the lettering on the inside. And when I cut the circle, I did it a little bit outside of the line. So what I'm going to do is go to the sander, my disc sander, and go all around the edges here, working it right up to the line so it'll be a nice smooth circle in the end. Okay, so let's go do that right now. Okay, that brings that right up to the line now, so right up to the edge, and looks pretty good. I think we can get away with that. What we're going to do now is take this label off, but before we do that, we're going to score those lines. let's go over to the bench and take a look at that. All right, we're going to peel this label off after, but before we do that, I want to be able to see these lines on the actual disc itself. So I think the best way we can do this is to take a ruler right now and just put it right on the edge of each one of these lines before we take the label off. Know exactly where we are, and score it with a nice deep cut. Okay, so there's camera. It's not too out of focus. There we go. You can see the score that's left behind. Alright, I'm going to do the rest of these and take it off, and then we're going to take it over to the sander and clean it up a bit. Alright, we're over here at the buffing wheel again, the sanding wheel. I'm going to go over this thing and smooth out all the fuzzies on the edge there and clean this up a little bit. Should be a little careful when you would do that so you don't ruin it. What I think I'm going to do is go over these lines with a pen or a pencil and make them stand out a little better too before we put our center nail in there. Okay. Alright, I've sanded sanded down the wheel, of course, and I took a pencil and I scored those little marks that I made on the wheel to make them stand out a little better. Just use the pencil. Could do it with something fancier if I wanted to, but it's just demonstration purposes. I also drilled a 1/4-inch hole in one of the triangles here, one of the pieces, because I want to insert this little plug. It's a 1/4-inch dowel into one of them with a little bit of glue on it, and that will serve to, when we have to spin this thing, give us a little bit of meat to leverage it and be able to move it right across there. So what I want to do is take a little bit of this CA glue, 2P10 I believe it's called, medium, and we'll put just a little drop or two along the edge here. Don't really need a lot on here. There we go. We'll let it down in now that we got the glue on it. Just need a little stub there to put our finger on it so we'll be able to spin it later on down the road. Okay, and now what we also want to do is to take this little brad that I have here, and I'm going to put it right through here in the center. So what I'm going to do is take this tape and put it on top of the tape. Just adjust the camera so you can see this, and we'll just gently put it right through here on center. Okay, we now have our spinner. It's going to be a real simple process here, nothing complicated. Take a pair of pliers that I've got here now, and we want this thing to spin easily, so I'm going to put it on the nail in the back here as it comes through, and hold it down good and tight and turn it so that we can take some of the friction off of this thing. Okay, I think we've adjusted it enough so that we should be able to get it to spin on there without any problem. Don't really want it bent at all. Try to keep it as straight as possible. Alright, we're going to attach this to the table we're going to build for it. So let's work on that now. Okay, I made this base for the project out of a piece of pine, which is 5 inches by 7 inches long, and I placed a hole roughly in the middle so that the wheel can sit on that and have a place to rotate. Now, if you just put it right in there, it's going to be rubbing on the bottom, and I don't really want a lot of surface rub on this thing. I'd like to have it move as smoothly as possible. So I made this little square, which I'm going to put down over the hole, and this will go right over the top of it. So it's actually going to be raised up above the board a little bit, and there'll be less surface area rubbing against the wheels when you spin it. After you've spun it a few times, it should wear into a nice smooth spin. Alright, so I'm going to put that on there right now. Okay, I glued the devil's head on the spring to a little triangle that I made, which points to the line or between the lines when you spin the wheel. And what I did now is I sprayed it down with some lacquer, and I'm going to just let it dry. And when I get it all dried up, we'll take it for its first spin to see how it works, and we'll see how it goes. Okay, we finished up this little project. The wheel spins pretty good. Stops nicely. Our little devil head bounces around here. Can have a little fun with that, I suppose. But it's a nice little project to do. Get some practice with your scroll saw. And hope you enjoyed it. If you did like it, click the little like button down below there. And you might want to subscribe to the channel too. Thank you for watching.
This machine is predicting our future. Do you think I could just walk away from it?